After World War II, a conflict began between the Western powers, mainly the US and Britain, and those of the East, the Soviets and the Chinese. It came to be called the Cold War. From its beginning, the Cold War was a way of keeping the world in chaos and fear, pitting the Christian nations against the communist nations, and most importantly, a way to keep the spotlight off the Vatican. Many people knew of Rome's backing of the Catholic dictators of Europe. They also knew of Rome's aid in helping many of them to escape. The Vatican had not been punished for these crimes. In fact, Pope Pius XII should have stood before the judges at Nuremberg. The Jesuits used the Cold War as an effective diversion for Rome. It worked like a charm. To get it started, a rock in the road had to be removed. That rock was General George S. Patton. At the end of World War II, General George Patton wanted to attack the Soviet Union. Patton saw the menace to the free world communism was and wanted to go ahead and end it. Patton's conversation to General McNarney in 1945 was revealing. Why do you care what these goddamn Russians think? We are going to have to fight them sooner or later. Why not do it now while our army is intact and the damn Russians can have their hind end kicked back into Russia in 3 months? The Jesuits could not allow the Soviet Union to be destroyed. As Robert Wilcox lays out in his book, Target Patent, Roman Catholic William Donovan, head of the OSS, arranged for the assassination of Patton. Patton had survived 3 previous attempts on his life. He also survived the 4th, but was hospitalized. While in the hospital, a refined form of cyanide was given to him that can cause or appear to cause embolisms and heart failure. After making preparations to leave the hospital, Patton's health took a sudden turn for the worse, and he died. The result was that the Jesuits got their Cold War. During the Cold War, the activity of 2 U.S. presidents, John Kennedy and Ronald Reagan, reveals much about the power of the Jesuits. John Kennedy was a Roman Catholic who turned against the Vatican and the Jesuits. Kennedy decided to be his own man, take his own counsel, and not take orders from Rome. He turned out to be a liberal Catholic, which is just as obnoxious to the Vatican as a Protestant or any heretic. Kennedy began to pull out of Vietnam. He ordered the Treasury Department to print money and not go through the privately held Federal Reserve. And he had plans for a new invasion of Cuba.
See, Kennedy wanted Cuba back from Castro. The big lie is that Kennedy, he canceled the orders. He didn't cancel the orders. McGeorge Bundy canceled the order for the air cover in the Bay of Pigs. That's according to Fletcher Prouty in his book JFK. And on the USS Essex, which was an aircraft carrier there, that the captain was told not to give any air cover to the invading patriots there in Cuba. But that cover was canceled, not by JFK, because the night before he said he gave a go-ahead. And to prove this point, there's a book that's been released about a year ago called Ultimate Sacrifice, written by Waldron. And in that book, it shows that JFK had planned to invade Cuba on December 1st, 1963, and get rid of that Jesuit, Fidel Castro. On November 22nd, he was killed, 8 or 9 days before the invasion was to take place.
Like the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy's assassination was meticulously planned and executed, with Lee Harvey Oswald as the patsy.
But you see, Gene Hill with Mary Moorman were right there at the limousine. And Gene Hill and Mary Moorman said that the driver turned around and shot. But they thought the driver was shooting back at the shooter. They didn't know the driver was shooting JFK in the head, along with the storm drain shooter. A simultaneous headshot. That shot from the grassy knoll was a distraction. They had a smoke. I mean, we've had smokeless gunpowder since the turn of the century. I mean, why would they use a rifle and have smoke? It was a distraction for the crowd to run up to the grassy knoll, because the real shooters was the storm drain shooter and the driver shooting Kennedy in the head simultaneously. And I show in my book, Kennedy was shot 5 times.
The assassination was done in a very public way to show other would-be presidents what would happen if orders were not followed.
The assassination of John F. Kennedy is done in broad daylight as a warning to all the other leaders of the world, but it's also done with this viciousness because you see JFK was a Catholic and they wanted to kill their Catholic boy who refused to uphold the temporal power of the Pope. So they killed him viciously and cruelly as a warning to any other Catholic who would dare trammel the temporal power of the Pope.
In contrast to Kennedy, Ronald Reagan did everything he could to court Vatican approval after an assassination attempt on his life in 1981.
Well, Ronald Reagan was advocating some things that would have built the middle class that were generally pretty good. He was talking like a conservative. Evidently, he thought for a few minutes he was the president because he'd been told to choose George Bush as the vice presidential candidate. And all the conservatives said, how could you do this to us? And yet he's still, quote unquote, elected. So Reagan starts to advocate some pretty good things. And so, we're going to punish you, Ronnie. And so they carried out the attempted assassination. If he survives, he'll do what he's told. If he doesn't survive, well, then George Bush will openly take his place and be the president. Either way, we win. So Jerry Parr, the Secret Service agent, shoots Reagan inside the vehicle and makes it look like Hinckley is the one who shot him. Hinckley did not shoot Reagan. Reagan was untouched at the time he was entering the limousine. He was shot inside the limousine by a Secret Service agent, and then, phenomenally enough, a Jewish doctor saved his life. So Bush was a part of this, of course. He was not openly made the president, but he was secretly the president during the entire 2 terms of Ronald Reagan.
President Reagan has come to fulfill the greatest moment in the history of this conspiracy, because no other president has come as close as President Reagan with the Vatican, and even not even John F. Kennedy. What that means is they have done to President Kennedy, to President Reagan, what they were not able to do even through a Roman Catholic president.
In 1984, Reagan established diplomatic relations with the Vatican. Not since 1867 had there been any official contact between the two countries.
That relationship was formally restored by the worst president America has ever been disgraced with, our greatest traitor, Ronald Reagan. When he restored diplomatic relationships with the Vatican, formally recognized the sovereign state of Vatican City as a nation, and now America can enter into a concordat with the Pope, as warned by ex-Jesuit Alberto Rivera for many years.
Ex-Jesuit priest Alberto Rivera also revealed a secret concerning the inauguration of Ronald Reagan that some noted at the time, but few fully understood.
Alberto Rivera made a startling statement in which he said there would be a sign given to Jesuits throughout the world when all churches would be taken over by the Jesuit order. The sign was to be when a president of the United States took his oath of office facing an obelisk. For the first time in U.S. history, the swearing-in ceremonies were